Hey friends! Welcome to Spirit Club, a podcast and community that is all about doing the inner work to live an aligned and, dare I say, happy life. I'm your host, spiritual guide and intuitive, Angell Kelly, and I'm here to share my teachings along with messages passed on to me from higher consciousness. I've also got incredible guests in store to help you go down all those spiritual rabbit holes. So let's go! Welcome to the club! Welcome back, Spirit Club, and thank you for joining. We have a very special, near to my heart guest today that I'm excited to introduce you to. Today we have Dixie Bennett. Dixie is a soul alignment coach and bodyworker, and she mostly focuses on healers and leaders, helping them shift any blocks in the way from them being their truest, highest self. And Dixie is particularly special to me because she is one of my spiritual mentors. And Dixie and I had about a 6-month coaching relationship back in 2021. And it was a really transformational time for me. And Dixie was very key in my spiritual awakening and my healing. So welcome, Dixie.
Thank you for having me.
Yay.
To be here.
So, Dixie, I have some icebreaker questions for us all to get to know you and us to warm up. Does that sound good?
Sounds good.
Okay. So, first question is, what is your sun, moon, and rising, if you know them?
Oh my gosh. I know. Well, I'm a Virgo.
Virgo sun, we know this.
And I think it's a Libra.
Oh, Libra moon?
I think so. I've got a lot of Libra in my chart, but I'm terrible at astrology, believe it or not. Don't really know much about it.
I mean, at some point, because I'm a geek, I would love to look up your sun, moon, and rising because it always helps me be like, oh, yeah, there it is. That's always fun. But okay, so Virgo sun we know. So what about being a Virgo do you really resonate with?
Well, yeah, I definitely am a perfectionist.
Okay.
That shows up in a lot of ways. Um, I'm also very direct, very blunt,
Right.
as you know.
Yeah. I mean, that's really helpful as a coach, right?
Yeah, I'm a truth teller. I don't really sugarcoat a lot of things. But it's not in a harsh manner. I hope not. Anyway.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's for the people that gravitate to work towards, it's exactly what we need, you know?
Yeah, I do find people come and they get exactly what they need. I don't know. Just, I mean, I'm very meticulous in what I do. I'm very, specific in things. There's definitely a control aspect, which I've also been, um, because it shows up in lots of different ways. And, Virgos are just very interesting. They're hard. I know they're one of the harder ones to get along with.
Oh.
Um, they're not really fluffy and light and
Yeah. I mean, and I for the Virgo or people that have Virgo in their chart that I know, I see that perfectionist part, and I'm not speaking to your experience, but I see it holding them back in a lot of ways. I'm
I
sure
was
you've had to
on
work
the
through.
control side, it's very much checks and balances. And I know for myself, I'm definitely more, uh, I think the other side of me, and I think that's where a lot of the Libra is in me too. I know I've got more air.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm a natural healer. I know that's one of my soul gifts for sure that I was born with.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I know, my life has really been about letting go of control in my version of control.
Mm-hmm.
And I still overcome that, but also as a Virgo, I don't do well in chaos. So
Mm-hmm.
if there's chaos around me, I don't like it. If there's
Right.
chaos in my house, I don't like it. I like flow, I like organization, I
Yeah.
like so
Yeah.
even when I move and stuff, I like to have central stations that are like make sense right away. The rest is
Right.
okay, they'll figure it out. But
Right.
as long as like there's, a bit of flow, then I'm good and I can figure the rest out.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like you've like found your way to work within what you know about yourself, which,
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, I would say so. I'm also a lifelong learner and I'm always looking to grow and learn and apply. And I think I know for myself, if I'm learning something, I'm looking to apply it right away.
Hmm.
That's always, it's not, I'm not wasting my money on
Yeah.
things.
Yeah. You're grounded. You're
Like,
earth. Yeah.
I would
Yeah.
say that. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
definitely grounded. And I'm also very earth. So I've got a lot of earth in me too.
Yeah. I see
Um,
that.
yeah.
Okay, cool. Okay, thank you. Next question. What's your morning routine, if any?
Um, it has changed a lot over the years. I think there's a time and a season for things, and I was kind of thinking about this the other day. Um, I have shifted so much in the last even just 4 years. My morning routine is very different. Um, you know, it kind of leads into one of my values. So I've really been establishing one of my core values is spaciousness.
Mm.
And so I'm not married to this idea of busy and scheduled, and I leave a lot of space in my calendar now,
Mm.
overall. So even in my mornings, I like to wake up naturally. I don't like to wake up to an alarm clock. And that's been for quite a while now. And sometimes I wake up at 6, sometimes I wake up at 7, sometimes I wake up at 9,
Yeah.
and I kind of allow for that. So I don't really like to get into my day till about 10 or 11. And and during that time, it can be anything. Like sometimes I do red light therapy, or I
Mm.
might do that at night. I mean, I have kind of a morning and a night that kind of, you know, uh, overlap,
Support
really.
each other.
It
Yeah.
depends,
Yeah.
it depends on what feels right and true for me, because sometimes I have a better response at night. Um, I listen to, binaural beats. I listen to different forms of meditation. I might even just go into quiet time. Like it's just really quiet for myself, quiet and reflective. It's not necessarily writing down, journaling, um, but it's just clean thought, and really listening into my body. I think that's one of the biggest things because we're so busy, and this is what I teach my clients too, is just really how can we create some quiet time just to really listen in and hear what our body's trying to tell us. So
Mm.
even when I'm waking up in the morning, I might just do some gentle breathing into my body and just kind of see
Mm.
where the stickiness is for the night. And
Mm.
then when I'm going to bed, I just kind of spend some quiet time just letting my body relax, and wherever I'm holding that tension from the
Mm.
day, then I just bring my breath and awareness there and just allow myself to, unwind and find my own flow. I'm aging too, so I'm going
Yeah.
through, some menopausal stuff. And this is, I really trust that we get the sleep that we need.
Mm.
So I'm not tied. I try not to freak out if I didn't get my 6 hours or my 8 hours of sleep or whatever it is. And sometimes women just need more hours of sleep. I've noticed that for myself too. Sometimes it's 10 hours. So I'm not married to a
Mm.
specific amount, and I just really feel into what is it that I need. And if it's 3 hours and then I'm awake, I'll listen to a meditation or I'll do some things that not stir up my soul, but just sort of kind of wind and calm things down. And all of a sudden, before I know it, I'm asleep again.
Mm. Yeah.
So, I just really important to find things that really make sense for you.
Hmm.
Uh, and then when I'm active, I have a rebounder. So I've been bouncing on my rebounder for like 5 minutes a day.
Cool.
And, and I just do, this is my gift this year to myself is micro learning,
Mm.
micro activities that really support me. So it's not, again, less is more sometimes. It's not always about heavy and aggressive. It's simple and gentle. So
Mm.
my rebounder, 5 minutes, I put my timer on And, it's just, I'm not thinking about it. And then all of a sudden it's done. And I'm like, wow. I'm like, sometimes, it's great for the lymphatics. It's great for the whole body. And I've noticed that my energy is like totally boosted.
Oh,
So, and it might not happen in the morning. It might happen in the afternoon, it might
right,
happen in the evening, or I might do it a couple times a day, So
right.
again, it's just that it's accessible. It's right there. And then some weights, I just do 5 pound weights and I just do a few different reps and just some things, and sometimes I just dance around the living room.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, it really sounds like, like it's like you've created the space and then you listen and then you've created
Yeah.
the space to do whatever the body wants
Hmm.
rather than being like, this is what we're doing, whether you want it or not. Yeah.
Hmm.
Mm.
Hmm. And
Very
it's
nice.
like I said, there's a time and a season, I think, because there was a time where I was super busy and I went into hardcore boot camps and
Hmm.
hardcore exercising, and you're doing it all, heavy weightlifting. I mean, there's so many things I've done, and aggressive exercise and me aren't really that good of friends.
Yeah.
So
We
I've
learned that. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Amazing. I mean, I like the idea of asking the body. It's making me realize that, like, often when I'm spending quiet time, I'm sort of like tuning into the soul
hmm
and I kind of skip over the body. So I'm going
hmm
to thank you for bringing that to my awareness.
hmm
Yeah.
Well, that's a big part of my work. It's about marrying the soul to the body,
Mm-hmm.
and we forget that. Like that's a big, I tell people I put souls in bodies.
Yeah.
Everyone's wandering around and they're like, "Why doesn't my body work?" And I want it to be this and this and this, instead of really actively listening, because there's different body styles, there's different body types,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and we need to fuel our body accordingly, not based on what everybody else should or what other
Mm.
people say that we should be doing.
Yeah. Endless lists like that. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Thank you.
Hmm.
Um, Next question is, so this podcast we really focus on doing the inner work, and
Hmm.
obviously I know you are no stranger to working on yourself.
Hmm.
So if there's any particular teacher, mentor, coach, author that stands out that was significant to you that you might want to share with the audience.
Oh my goodness.
I know, hard, a
Just
lot of pressure. Whoever comes up first.
um I I don't know. I'm working, well, I'm kind of, I go in and out with people. Like some people are for season again and then they come back around a little bit later. I've always been a student of energy and I've always been a student of understanding. When I look at the body, I look at the energy, the meridians, I look at the chakra system, and then I look at the physiology as well. And my big belief is that our body is a direct reflection of where we're stuck in our life. So
Mm-hmm.
everything that's going on to me is just symptomology.
Mm-hmm.
And so right now, I mean, I've always been a huge fan of studying how emotions have an effect on our body.
Okay.
And when I look at chronic pain, it's usually emotional blockages. And it's maybe even be spiritual blockages. I would say most of it is there's emotional, and then there's also a spiritual element.
Right.
Um, and the, I mean, right now I'm in a program studying emotional medicine with a
Mm-hmm.
lady out of Florida, and it's an invitation only community. So I got introduced to this about a year ago, which is perfectly in alignment with my work. So I've got a strong community there where we meet like 3, 4 times a week,
Oh, wow.
different topics.
Yeah.
So we're studying trauma, we're studying emotional medicine, we're studying, um, just loving ourselves more. And what's the other one? And just living in sage. So it's really about understanding our saboteurs and how our saboteurs,
Mm-hmm.
impact us and affect us, which is our mindset.
Mm-hmm.
So we talk about a lot about mind, strengthening our mind muscle, and just learning how to identify the saboteurs that are actually impacting us and how all of that relates into health and well-being.
Okay.
Yeah, and then I'm studying with another lady, Cynthia Dale, she's like
Hmm,
a
I
psychic
have
and
her book.
yeah.
Energetic Boundaries.
Um, I have so many of her books, and I keep going back to them, and I keep reading them, and then I just was doing one of her master classes the other day. I just kind of downloaded her package just for refreshing and just kind of and I'm a big fan of going back to basics. Sometimes we get
Mm,
lost in complications.
right.
Our mind complicates it and we just get so overwhelmed in life and details that sometimes it's just nice to go back to the absolute basics and just hang out in the basics for a little
Right.
while and then kind of navigate back into more understanding. So I'm a big fan of revisiting information. It's never outdated.
Yeah, because it's like when you go back, you are different. So then you like perceive it. And yeah, yeah.
Yeah, huge.
And
Yeah.
that, sorry, that first teacher, are you allowed to share her name, the one that's invite only?
Um, uh,
No
yeah,
pressure.
well, yeah, no, I'll
Okay,
just do
we'll leave
that
it.
for now. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Okay. Okay, cool. Great. Thank you. Okay, so this part of the icebreaker is where we like to do a little magic. And I will start by asking you, what is one thing you want to let go of right now?
One thing I'd like to let go of, I'm still working on people pleasing.
Mm,
And, I'm a reformed people pleaser, but it still sneaks in there?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you seen it come up lately in some particular way?
Absolutely. It's not as present as it used to be, but it's still there. And all of a sudden you're just playing out an old program. It's like, whoa, wait a minute. How did I get
Wait.
into Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, there are the more obvious ways that you've probably worked through, and now, you're not playing into them. And then there are the more subtle people pleasing ways.
Yes. Well, and I think that's again, it's that whole, we have layers of learning and then layers of identifying, and they're sneaky. And when we have like major programming we have more than one, obviously. Um, but when we start really digging into it and starting, if you can identify it, it gets faster and faster, the
Hmm.
identification. And then, you can put a stop to it and then decide something different.
Right.
Hmm.
Right. Yes. Yeah. That's the save. That's the hope. Is you're like, okay, I'll do this work and I'll get faster and faster at identifying. So
Well, instead of days or weeks or months or years, it's
years.
like
Yeah.
minutes. It can be
Totally.
minutes or it could be it's hours and minutes. And it's just like, whoa, how did I play into that again?
Hmm. Yeah.
Just like you just shake it off and it's like, yeah, I think I get to change my mind, you
Right.
know?
I get to choose different.
Yeah.
Um, okay. Well, I think that's one we can all resonate with in this audience. Um, okay. And then what is one thing you would like to call in right now?
What am I calling in? Um, I, you know, I think it's more patience with myself.
Hmm.
We always hold ourselves to a higher standard and we're always self-critical and, you know, judge ourselves pretty harshly.
Hmm.
I would say that that's always, impatience. I get impatient sometimes, not as much as I used to, but it's like, again, I go back to times and seasons.
Yeah.
And there's a time and a season to sit still for a little while.
Right.
And it's not, we're so conditioned to doing something for a measurement of success or
Mhm.
there's a form of measurement and again it's just I'm still living into this value of spaciousness and it just keeps kicking my butt.
Right.
So it's
Right.
teaching me more and more and more that it's not always on my ego's agenda, it's really on my spiritual agenda.
Mm. Hmm. Well, I feel like everything really ties together. Everything that you just talked about and into the theme of spaciousness. You're certainly like
Mhm.
following that North Star.
Mhm.
Um, okay. Well, thank you. Thank you for playing my little game, doing a little magic.
Question.
So I would love to start, Dixie, today with just your story, how you came to be into this work and doing what you do for a living, and just ultimately how you live your life now.
Yeah, it's evolved. So I've been it's interesting. I had this conversation many times as of late, because everybody's at different stages of their transition or their business. And I love talking about spirituality. I love talking about business. I love talking about money. I love talking about, I mean, there's really no topic that I'm not comfortable talking about,
Right.
because it's all ties back to what we're here to express and experience. And for myself, um, you know, I'm in my 15th year of business, and I
15,
never
1 5?
1 5.
Congratulations.
It's like, wow, where did the time go? And it's been definitely an evolution. Just like, I mean, I think I've always been an empath, and I've always been extremely sensitive to people, my environment, and another. But I didn't really know my awakening didn't really happen until I was 26. But I was still pursuing personal development. Like, I had questions from when I was 19. I would say was when I really started, there's got to be more to this.
Hmm.
And even when I was a kid, I grew up on a farm in a small town, and I always thought there's got to be more to life than this. There's got to be
Hmm.
more. And I'm like, I knew I was going to leave. I always knew that it wasn't where I wanted to be. And there was this big, beautiful world out there that I was going to experience and explore. So travel was really important. But I didn't really know how to get there, you know?
Yeah.
Um, and then I didn't go back to university till I was like 21. I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my life. And so, I was a bit of a late bloomer in that regard. But I was so grateful that I was, because everything just lined up and happened the way that it was supposed to.
Hmm.
And so I had a really successful career in oil and gas, and kind of went that route because, that's what I knew. I knew farming and oil and gas. That was kind of what I grew up in. And then, just at the age of 26, just a whole bunch of things just started happening where I was just really aware that I was seeing differently. And I could see people, I knew things.
Hmm.
And it was just kept getting stronger and stronger and stronger. And especially my coworkers and colleagues. But then also in my own body, I was struggling, and I had a couple of near-death experiences in my early 20s.
Oh.
And so then I was, I feel like, and I've had a few since then. So I've had some rude awakenings, multiple near-death experiences. None that fully crossed over, but still that brought me into a higher level of awareness. And I think that's
Hmm.
what one of them was for me. It was just
Hmm.
an initiation into a higher level consciousness.
Right.
Um, so my journey has been very different than a lot of other people's, but I always was able to see. So I've been able to see people's energy. I see when they're sick. I see, where they're not telling the truth.
Hmm.
I see the energy of the person. I can tell, a lot about a person in 5 minutes or less. And I
Hmm.
try really hard. I don't want to read everybody, but
Right.
I think it was created out of, a lot of things that happened when I was a kid too, just
Hmm.
learning how to read people. But it was, I love telling this one story because I was 15 years old. And when I really think back to the first time of really seeing energy, I was out with my dad in a paternity pen when we were calving. And it was like, I don't know, midnight or late in the morning or something like that, where a cow was having a problem. And so Dad and I went out, and it was a cold winter morning, middle of the night kind of thing. But when we went to the barn, all I saw was this golden light,
Hmm.
and it felt like, you know, this idea of what it must have been like when Jesus was born.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It was like that, but that glowing, healing energy.
The
And
energy of like creation.
so, yeah, the energy
Yeah.
of birth.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so it was this golden light where I saw this arc of golden light, and it was just so mesmerizing and calm and beautiful and serene and peaceful. And we had, our border collie was there, and whenever I watched her work, her eyes would turn yellow. So I would always see when she was on, and then when she was working, and then when she was off. And
Mm-hmm.
I paid attention, and she was just on it. She knew what she needed to do. She knew where she needed to be at all times. So I started having all these kind of really cool experiences. But I saw my dad in that one experience as the shepherd that he really is,
Mm-hmm.
and the healer for animals. Like his animals love him, and that's his relationship, and that's where he shines the most is with his animals. Um, but again, it was just that golden hue, and it was such a mystical, magical evening of just, you know, beauty
Right.
and grace.
Felt and seen
Felt
experience.
and
Yeah.
seen, but I was on the outside of the bubble, witnessing every experience that happened. So that was when I was 15. So I had all of these like little glimpses of information, and it's like, okay, well, what was that about?
Right.
And then you move on with life, and you kind of forget about it, and then you kind of come back, and under further evaluation, right? And yeah, just I knew, when I was in oil and gas, I was, as I see a lot of my own clients at between 26, a lot of the girls, they're 26 to 20 to 35. And they're not sure about where, is this it to life? And is there more? Am I late? Like, should I be having kids? Should I be getting married? But I want this other life. And so I was at that age, 26 too, where I'm like, okay, well, I've got this career and I'm kind of growing, and, things are good, but something felt like it was missing. So I started working with a spiritual coach, and out of
Mm.
the session came this voice that said, you need to create a healing center. And so I was like, what does that mean? And I just parked it for a while, and then I just kept getting nudges, from the universe, just saying, pay attention. You need to explore this. And so, with my own health and my own chronic pain, I was seeking for alternative modalities and alternative support. And so I really started paying attention. Well, what was I doing that was really helping me? And so, pretty much most of the modalities I do now really turned my life around and helped me find more of who I was and found relief at that time.
And do you
So,
want to just name a few of those for the listeners? I know you've got like a
yeah.
huge list.
Well, I mean, the first real calling was cranial sacral therapy. And actually, you know what? The first one was Reiki, to be honest. And this is way before, like, you guys have it so lucky now. There's
We
so
do.
much available. And I'm talking like this, so this is like 30 years ago. About 30
Yeah.
years ago, I started on this path, and there was nothing available. You had to go into these nooks and crannies and hopefully find something. You
Yeah.
couldn't
Like, I'm like, how
go
did she
on.
find a spiritual coach? You know?
Well, ironically, it was an engineer that I worked with. His wife was
Ah.
called, right? But I
Uh-huh.
was still questioning. So I met these Reiki people, and then I started going to alternative trade shows, which were
Mm.
like crickets,
Tarot readers. Yeah.
and tea leaf reading, and I just kind of found myself in this underground pocket of things, and just kept saying yes, and just kept trying and trying and trying, and it didn't really fit, but then I met this one lady, that really turned things around. But my body just unlocked. Like, it was just this really amazing experience with her. And then she was doing coaching as well. So it was the cranial that really changed my life, and the somatics, which is the somatic emotional release. Because
Mm.
that's when I first understood, wow, I was really holding a lot of emotional baggage. And then she's like, oh, I'm going to do this life coaching thing. And I'm like, okay, I'll be your guinea pig. So then, I learned that, that's when the voice came out and said, you need to have a healing center. And, when I go back to my grade 12 yearbook, I wrote that I want to be a massage therapist. But
You
even back
did?
then, being a massage therapist was really hard to get into because they only accepted maybe 30 people at a time. Now there's a massage clinic, there's a massage on every corner.
Mhm.
Like it's changed so much.
Yeah.
And then so, I just kind of bumbled through and just kind of kept following my own guidance and my own intuition, just kept asking questions and asking for more. And then when I kind of sat with it for a year because I'm like, well, what does healing mean? Like, do I need to actually become a healer? Do I need to take these modalities? Can I just open up a healing clinic and just manage it? Like, what does that look like? And I got that, no, you need to learn how to do this. And
Mm.
so, but I remember the first time I went for class and I was there, and they're teaching the theory. And it was like I already knew everything inside of me, but the theory was being presented, so I knew what I was doing.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much my whole career has
Mm.
been I meet the teacher who gives me the information that validates what I've already been doing.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. I like that. I call it an unlocking moment because it's
Yeah,
like, it feels like an unlocking of something that
yeah.
your soul knows. And you're like,
The
oh,
innate knowing.
I
Yeah,
know this. Yeah.
yeah, I know this.
Yeah.
And then, and then I had energy balls that just were in my hands one day. I woke up with like oven mitts of energy on my hands. And I didn't know what to do with it. And so I was talking with a colleague, and she said, I think you should go take Reiki. So sure enough, there was like this Reiki class that was like within a couple of weeks of this awakening, and
Yes.
went took the Reiki, and it was just like, and then everything kind of quieted down, and I learned some tools on how to navigate and manage my energy,
Hmm.
and like it was just everything was literally, it was like, here's the next path, here's the next part, here's the next class, here's the next teacher, here's the next information. And I am a knowledge seeker, so my satiation for knowledge is very big.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so, there isn't really very many leaders or teachers out there that I haven't experienced or heard of or
Hmm.
explored. And even then, like I'm world traveled. I've been to a lot of different places. I've worked with healers, shaman all over the world, from the UK to Hawaii to the US to Scotland to, I mean, the list goes on and on. There's just amazing pockets, of just really amazing, intuitive people.
And there will continue to be. And if you're a knowledge seeker, you'll always be a part of that. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so at what point did you go, okay, buy oil and gas? I'm like taking the leap. Because there are a lot of
Yeah.
people in this audience who are sort of like side hustling in healing or spiritual
Yeah.
businesses, but also working their 9 to 5s.
You know what? I am a big fan of you need to pay your bills and make your money first. And, I had my business, I mean, I started my business on the side.
Hmm.
So really, I kept it quiet. I didn't really share with a lot of people. So I took my evenings, my weekends, my vacation time for all of my training.
Right.
Everything just seemed to work out in a really beautiful way where, it was just, again, here's the course, here's the next class,
Hmm.
here's and um, I'm trained in another modality called Bowen therapy, and I took it through the University of Mount Royal, and it was like a full certification, 1 year program.
Right.
And it just fit perfectly into my life. And then, same with the Up Ledger Institute is where I took cranial sacral from. So, I mean, and even with Bowen, like both of them, I'm internationally accredited. So, they're international institutions. So it's, I've trained in the US, I've trained across Canada, I've, traveled and trained. So, I mean, that's a big part that fed my soul and everything too. So, if you can do it, do it. Just but don't give up your day job until you've established your part-time job.
Mm.
And then it's like if you build it, I believe that. Like if you build it, they will come.
Mm.
And if you're on the right track, you
Right.
know, sometimes we just build things and
Yes.
hoping.
Force it. Yeah.
You force it, but I know for me this was a calling that I could not ignore. And I had a lease space that I started with, and I went to it every day after work. So I'm a big, intention is everything. So it's one thing to build something, but what are you doing with it? So I would go, and for my own self, it was more of my own healing space that I would go to and just be in. And, and then I slowly just kind of started when I was ready. I think it took about 2 months. Like I was paying the lease, but I didn't have any clients. And
Yeah.
then it
Yeah.
was, I just decided, you know what? I'm just going to take a chance. And I emailed 250 people in my contacts of oil and gas. I
Whoa.
just
That's
said,
brave.
here's kind of what I'm doing. If anyone's interested, let me know. I don't know that that would fly now, but yeah, I mean, now we have Facebook and LinkedIn, and like there's so many different channels. Back
Mm-hmm.
then, it was email and phone numbers,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and so I
Business
just,
cards.
yeah,
Yeah.
so
Rolodex.
I literally just emailed. And all of a sudden, I got a bunch of messages from people who are suffering, and they're just like, Dixie, I'm willing to try anything. And so, one of my first clients, he's passed on, but he was an editor in chief with the, Calgary Herald at one point. He was really big in public relations with Chevron. Like, he was a really big deal who had Parkinson's. And he's like, Dixie, I'm willing to try anything. And when he first started coming to see me, he, was getting the most amazing results that he had never experienced before.
Right.
And so he's like, Dixie, I believe in you. He's like, there's something here. So he was my first client, and he committed, and he was coming every week. And then it just sort of built on that. Before
Right.
I knew it, I was seeing 20 people a week part time. So evenings and weekends,
Holy shit.
and
How did you have the energy for that? Honestly.
uh, I was excited. It was just, it was what I thought about all the time. And I mean, my background's sales and marketing, so I've always loved the art of sales and marketing, which I believe also helped me understand building the brand, and things have evolved, with all the trends and everything too. And but I was in a big trust. And when I did my financials and really built my business plan, there was a time where, I mean, really, I was working for a drilling company, and it was kind of the end. I knew it was the end. It was just a really horrible experience. Just, there was no guidance, no mentorship, no true leadership. And it was the perfect time because I spent that time building my business and networking. And I would go to lunch hour networking groups. I went to breakfast networking groups. I just sort of found things that were really fitting into my life that weren't taking me away from my job, but then it was also I was excited for the next thing, and everything just sort of started to fit. So I couldn't deny it. And then it just sort of happened. And I had a really sound business plan, and that's the most important thing. I think you have to have a plan. You have to have a plan of action, and you need to know your numbers, and you need to know what you're willing to do. And I mean, would I go back and change anything? No, because it was exciting. It was, ground floor of something you know, that I was supposed to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I did take a lot of my work ethic from corporate into my healing practice.
Right.
And, I hit burnout at 5 years, but I built it very fast because I knew if I want to replace what I was making in oil and gas, which I
Right.
did, I replaced my income, six
Made
figures
it.
and more, and here I am 15 years later, and would I change a thing? No, because I think you have to go through all of those. You have to get excited, and you have to live your passion and breathe it,
Right.
and it was like an obsession.
Mm-hmm.
So, anything and everything I did was for the business. So for the first 10 years, it was definitely, um, I did everything that I was told to do.
Right.
And then, things kind of came to a halt because I was building based on shoulds.
Ah,
And I would say the last few years have really been, again, understanding, well, what are my personal values
mm,
that are in alignment with my soul value? So,
mm.
how am I building my business now? Very different than it was.
Right. Right.
But I think we have to go through those growth experiences, and
For
you
sure.
have to be passionate about it, and you have to be excited. And if you're going to sit there and think, oh, I'm just going to get a business and I'm just going to put an open sign and hope that people are going to come in. Sure, there's an element of that, because I do believe I'm still here and I am now mostly referral based,
Mm-hmm.
not out hunting like I was, but there's again a time and a season where you have to hunt, you have to
Right.
get known, and you have to build your reputation. And
Mm-hmm.
then there's a time where, you're just getting referrals and you still have to be doing other things. Like here I am on your podcast. Thank you very much for having me. We still have to do things that seed, and to me it's about just seeding so that you can actually see some flowers bloom maybe in 6 months and three
Right.
months or so we're always doing business building activities
Mm-hmm.
that help to build the revenues for sure.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I love hearing that story from start to finish. I think over our time working together, I would always pick up on pieces of it, but I really like hearing the the arc of it. And something that I like, that I know to be true for you, also that like I think is a through line through the growth of your business is you've always worked with God or the universe as to like what direction to go next. And so,
Absolutely.
it started with your body work, but it's certainly grown in many different directions since because of that listening.
Absolutely. Well, and really paying attention to my clients in the practice,
Ah,
is, and I find, I mean, what sets me apart, I work very much on intuition.
mm-hmm.
There's people who are very mechanically trained and they can get people to a certain level, using the technique only. But
Right.
then there comes a time where can we really read the body? Like, can we really see what's going on in the landscape? And that's really, I believe, what differentiates a really good practitioner from a mechanical trained practitioner.
Totally. I
And
honestly, Dixie, I honestly can't even go to those who like kind of just mechanically address it. It just,
yeah,
I don't really, it doesn't really have an impact on me.
me either.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, when I work, I look at the soul, the spiritual, the mental,
Yeah.
emotional, the causal,
The energy.
the
Yeah.
physical, what's going on. And is it physical that needs to be addressed first? I always ask. So I'm asking for guidance from your body. And that's, I'm such a gifted listener to what your body needs. I don't have any agenda.
Right.
And I have an agenda, I'm like, okay, well, I see this, I see these patterns. But ultimately, it's good to satisfy the ego by having a bit of
Right.
here's a loose outline of what we're going to do.
Right.
Um, but the truth is, we're going to treat whatever's there as it comes up because the body is always giving the priority.
Right. And
And
and whatever the person is actually willing to
yeah.
address, right? Because I'm sure you often see lots and clients to address, but whether or
Oh,
not they want to address it.
well, and you know what? That is the biggest thing right now. And I know for myself, what I've worked with other practitioners, Um, there's times where I've gone into a treatment and my body was not having it.
Mm.
And I've worked with other practitioners where they have an agenda, and if I'm not on their agenda, then they fire me. And I'm like, wow. I'm like, okay, this is interesting. Um, because our body is so innate, it has its own priorities. And sometimes, when we get a clear indication of what we need to address first, for some people, it might be just aligning the energy and then addressing nutrition. For some
Mm-hmm.
people, it might be addressing nutrition and then working on the body. You
Mm-hmm.
know,
Mm-hmm.
there's lots of different gateways in, but
Right.
we have so much information at our fingertips that everyone's just throwing the kitchen sink at it instead of really truly listening to what does the body need? What are the priorities of the body? And I spend a lot of time with my clients. We build their team. Like,
Mm-hmm.
who do you need on your team?
Mm-hmm.
That, I believe that we still have to have medical. I believe that we can have alternative, and we need to marry the two worlds together. Now, there's techniques and different ways to do that because not one is the only one is not the only answer. We need a combination. But then it's also finding the right combination that works for you.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes, and again, it might be a season. It might be a season of coaching. It might be a season of energy work. It might be a season of body work. It might be a
Mm-hmm.
season of acupuncture. It might be a season of, just listening to key meditations that are, aligning your energies in between everything time. So the homework is the most important thing. And I, even just coming back to gentle breath work, like I have very basic gentle techniques that I teach my clients.
Mm-hmm.
And, some people, they fight me on it because it can't be that basic. And I'm like, yes, it is that basic.
Let it be
But it's
simple.
that
Yeah.
simple,
Yeah.
And they'll fight me tooth and nail. It can't be that
Mm.
easy. I'm like, but did you try?
Yeah.
And they're not even trying it. And so they're not even giving themselves permission just to play, just to try. And
I'm remembering a time where that was me that I that I'm remembering, and it's when you taught me Ho'oponopono,
oh
and I
yeah.
was like, no, I was like, that's not gonna work. And now I'm like, I love it. I think it's, I think it's like very high frequency work. You know what I mean?
It's very high frequency work. Yeah. The Ho'oponopono is just cleansing and clearing. That's it. It's a cleansing and clearing technique.
And
You know?
forgiveness, like,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, okay, so you're talking about homework with your clients, and I just want to preface this with letting the audience know that, you generally aren't doing one-off work with people, even if it were Reiki or like some of your work that focuses on the body. You're generally supporting them through a journey. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I don't do one-off sessions. I mean, it depends on the person. Sometimes that's all they need. And I mean, I've seen miracles where they've done 10 years of, counseling, and they come to me for one session and it's just what they needed.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
like because
Right.
you've done all this work, you were ready for there was this one piece that needed to happen.
Mm-hmm.
That
Mm-hmm.
happens very rarely, but it does happen,
Right.
and so there's that one hit wonder.
Right. Right.
Um, but I would say it's more the journey is in, I've even been toying with it. It's like setting up your own personal retreat for yourself.
Mm.
And now that I am located out in Cochrane, if I see people in person, even just the trip out is more of a meditative opportunity to let go of your life for a little
Mm.
while, get into a different environment and scenery, and you're moving away from it. And then you're
Right.
going, even the energy of integration and going back into it, there's something
Mm-hmm.
healing
Mm-hmm.
about going out and coming back.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so and it's not that big of a drive for a lot of people.
No, no. It's
But
like
it's such
35 minutes. Yeah.
a,
But it's
it
like
really is.
you say, it is really it's like creating how do I say this? Some sacredness around the work that you're going into by traveling to it, and like you
Mhm,
say, leaving the day to day.
mhm.
Um so and then in working with you through a journey, they really get to do that integration that comes on the other side of the energy work, of the coaching work, and so on. So I would love to talk a little bit about integration because I think and you and I have talked about this before, I think it's
Mhm.
a missing piece in a lot of people's healing.
Well, even it depends. When I see somebody, we first talk about like, well, what are your goals, right? So
Mhm.
where do you, what is important to you to focus on that satisfies the ego? And then once we get into the work, then there's other things that start to come up. And it's like, okay, well, you said this, but this is what's coming up,
Right.
right? So it's always a check-in and permission, because if we're going against what you believe, you know, there has to be a balance, a check and balance in there as well. Um, and then going back to, well, are you seeing the changes within yourself? Like,
Mhm. Mhm.
I always see it, but I look at, is the body holding the work from our last session?
Mhm.
Can we build on it? That's what I'm always looking for is, can we build on this?
Mm.
And every client I've ever worked with, it's amazing because I meet them where they are and then we build on it.
Right.
And so I like to leave maybe a week or 2 weeks. Sometimes, depending on the person. Sometimes I see them biweekly. Sometimes you know, but like going to the gym, you can't just go once in a while when
Right.
you're first beginning. You need to establish some protocols and you need to
Right.
establish some repetitions that you can catch yourself,
Yeah.
and start to recognize where those patterns are. And sometimes in that first week, and my clients are like, oh my God, so much happened this week, Dixie, I can't even tell you. And I'm like, I know, right? So there's just because you have this new hypersensitivity and you're more aware and you're starting to see things with a different lens.
Right.
And then old patterns kind of creep in, and it's like, can we catch those old patterns
Mhm.
faster and faster and
Mhm.
faster? But also, I don't believe in pulling people uphill. You have to be willing to do the work
Mhm.
yourself, and I'm
Mhm.
just coming along with you.
Right.
I'm
And like you said,
just
meeting you where you are, whether or not you made it up the hill or not. Yeah.
yeah. And if we stand still for a while,
Yeah.
we stand still for a while, and that's a
Right.
big part of the soul journey because the soul has a very different agenda versus the ego.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Boy, do I know that.
Mm-hmm.
And so it kind of, when you think about it, or when I'm listening to you talk about integration, integration kind of feels like active reflection almost. It's like supported active reflection.
I would say it's more of an embodied, like it's absolute. To me, the integration process is when it's like kind of locks in,
Okay.
and it's
Yeah.
an embodiment process. So it takes a little bit of time. So, some gentle activities that help to bring you back to that quiet, to
Mm-hmm.
remind yourself of what it's like to stay, connected to yourself. Um, but it's finding little activities that make you feel more centered and gathered within yourself so that you can just, to me, it's like calming the nervous system. There's the terms that are going out there right now are dysregulated nervous system, dysfunctional
Mm-hmm.
nervous system. Um, people get stuck in different variations. Some people are stuck in a freeze cycle.
Right.
Can we identify that? Some people are
Mm-hmm.
stuck in a fight cycle. Can we identify that? Some people are stuck in a shock, and it's going to be different for different people. So I'm always listening to like the language that people are using because it's the key in how they describe themselves. They know themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're listening for those patterns, they know, but they just can't quite identify it. And that's where a third party, an outside person is really good to say, hey, this is what I'm hearing.
Right.
Oh, I
Right.
didn't even know I was using those words.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And then when you can start to isolate some of those behaviors, it's like, oh, and it's everybody has different layers and levels of challenge.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and you know, but again, some people it takes not very long to help them get into a stronger, more aligned state. Some
Mm-hmm.
people it's like remind, remind, remind,
Right.
remind. And
Right.
then all of a sudden it's just like, wow, I didn't react the way that I normally would. Like
Okay. Yeah.
that's a win.
Yeah. I mean,
Uh,
what that it requires so much patience on your part. When I think about it, it's like, if you're working on with someone on something and every week they show up and, it hasn't integrated.
mhm.
Um,
I always see the wins and I point out the wins. but then people forget their pain,
Right.
you know, and that's why, you know, I always love to start out my sessions with, you know, what are we celebrating?
Hmm.
Because it's important for you or them to make sure that they're seeing their wins. But I will always be the first person to point out what's different and the wins that I see based on the
Right.
first experience. But then as you get through it, people don't even realize. They're like, "Well, what happened to your back pain? What back
Right.
pain?"
Yeah.
Right? Well, you
You're like,
came in
remember why we started? Yeah.
exactly. Right?
Yeah.
Because people are caught up in the now. Like they're not thinking about what happened 6 months ago, or 3 months or 3 sessions ago. They're thinking about what's immediate right now.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
so even just in that, like I look at a lot of the physiology, whatever's going on symptomatically is exactly that. It's just a symptom of disharmony and imbalance, but it's also a gateway into the body. So it's giving us tons of information.
Right.
Now, what do we do that with that information?
Right. Right.
You know?
And so, what do you think and what have you seen the dangers of people skipping integration? Because you and I have talked about, there are some, like someone might go for a one hit wonder
Yeah.
session with someone and then there's no integration. And what have you seen to be sort of the fallout of that?
Well, I mean, again, we live in a society where there's so much information at our fingertips. And people want to jump ahead. They want to be somewhere. They deny. I think the biggest problem is most people deny where they are. They want so
Mm.
badly and so desperately to be over here, or, you know, the energy of comparison is so big. And we cannot compare ourselves to other people because we don't know their true journey.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
This whole idea of social media, like there's so much accessibility now, but it might not be the right thing that you need right now.
Right.
And this is probably one of the hardest challenges that I see with my clients. And I never used to be this way, but I'm starting to be stronger in it. I'm not a big fan of working with people who are working with multi people at one time
Right.
because
Yeah.
the message is too confusing.
Right.
And I know what works. I know how it integrates and I know the difference. And I get people and they're like, oh no, it can't be that simple. Well, I was listening to this podcast and this person told me I need to do this level of breathing.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Mm-hmm.
said, but you're not ready for that level of breathing because you haven't done the basics yet.
Right.
And so, you know, we're listening to this person talking about, you know, like box breathing, for example. I think box breathing is a really powerful exercise, but have you even paid attention to just your breathing first? You know?
Yeah.
And so it's like coming back to the absolute basics. And my base I have such a basic breathing technique that, you know, this is the most amazing experience I've recently had with a client where she was a refugee from war and they're on refugee status in Canada here. And she was referred to me. And when she first came in, she was not in her body. She
Mm-hmm.
grew up in war, like inhumane experiences, and it was not safe to be in her body. It was not safe to be seen because you could be killed. And
Right.
so when she first came in, she was completely not there. She was not in her body. She was not in her auric field. She was
Mm-hmm.
in the back of her auric field and just wanted to disappear and not be seen. And we did 3 sessions. And the third session, she did the homework. She did the activity. And she actually came in and I said, wow, I don't even recognize who you are. Because she came in fully embodied. She came into the room with confidence. And the first thing she said is, wow, Dixie, I actually like my body.
Oh,
I didn't know that was a thing.
right.
And it completely transformed her in 3 sessions because she
Yeah.
did the work. And it was so basic. Now we have a platform where we can build on that.
Right.
And, you know, it was that fast.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know? But she was committed to it and she did it every day for those
Mm-hmm.
3 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the integration process is if
Right.
you give yourself permission and just let yourself try and get out of your own way, you know, that's when the
And
magic happens.
probably drop expectation, because
Mhm.
it's like that ends up marrying you to one outcome that, maybe you and your soul and your body want a whole other outcome.
Yeah.
And maybe to your point about people like comparing, they're looking at Instagram, they're seeing someone who did this ayahuasca ceremony, and then the other side of it, they got this. They're like, oh, I want that. And it's like, well, like, is that the best thing for you? Like,
Yeah.
you know, go through the process.
Yeah. And that's the other part too, is people are they want you know, it takes time to integrate a learning and a training. And even practitioners, when I tell, my for myself, when I was first learning, I did 125 sessions practicing what I learned
Mm-hmm.
before I added more.
Right.
Right. And so if we go back to, I mean, even just the basics, Malcolm Gladwell, he said, if you practice something 10,000 times, that makes you a master.
Mm.
Right. And this is where we see in society, it's like, oh, this person is so famous. Overnight fame, right place, right time. No,
Yeah.
they've been, and this is, public speakers too. I watch people struggle with that. And it's like, oh, I've got this amazing program. I put blood, sweat, and tears into it. And I only had one person sign up. When you're
Mm-hmm.
first
Mm-hmm.
starting out, you have to meet that one person and give it all you've got, and so you start with one. If you've got one client, you start with one. If
Right.
you do a presentation and you've got one person that shows up, you give that presentation to that one person, but ultimately, it doesn't matter if you're on stage talking to one person or 10,000,
Right.
you're still talking to one person at the end of the day.
Right.
So the more you get schooled and conditioned to talk to one person at a time, that builds your confidence regardless.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
also, when you're a practitioner of whatever your school of science is, whatever your school of thought is, practice and practice and practice and iron out the kinks, because the more you practice it, you start to see, oh, I could do this differently. I could do this, in a shortcut.
Right.
And, I think that there's just, again, there's information overload. How do we sort through the noise? Well, you have to start by getting quiet with yourself and start asking yourself first, what is it that
Mm-hmm.
I need? What do I need right now in this moment? Maybe I
Right.
just need some food. Maybe I
Yeah.
just need
Yeah.
some,
Maybe I need to stop working on myself for a minute.
maybe I
Yeah.
need to stop working on myself
Mm-hmm.
and retreats too. People go on retreat after retreat after retreat after retreat. And I know for myself, I am so sensitive. It takes about 6 months. If you go on a major retreat, it takes about 6 months to integrate that work
Mm-hmm.
just from that retreat, because if it's 3 days long, 4 days long, a week long, so we're chasing this idea of sense of freedom, and then we go back to our life and nothing really fits. Well, you just raised your frequency, and then everything you have to give time for things to come in and find a new balance, because you're
And
not
your
going to go
love. Yeah.
right back down, but you have to give time for things to kind of balance out and find out this new sense of normality,
Right.
and for your old life to adjust to your new frequency, and for your
Right.
new frequency to adjust to your old life.
Right.
We can't
Yes.
just come in and I'm just going to cut everybody out of my life. No, right? We have to take this time of true integration, and integration is self-love, self-compassion, and patience.
Patience. Oh my gosh. Like,
Mm.
that word is so key because it's such a, like, it really is a journey. Integration is a journey. And yeah, sure, sometimes you integrate things faster than others, but a lot of the time, like you said, when it's a big experience, like a retreat or,
Mm.
like intensive 6 months of coaching with you, it required a lot of integration. It was constant
Mhm.
integration.
Mhm.
And the patience behind that, I think speaking from experience, it requires you to let go of whatever outcome. It's like let go of that outcome so that you can have the patience to integrate, and then probably a more magical outcome will come in.
I agree. Well, even just watching your evolution, it's you had an agenda, you had an idea,
Of course.
should be this way, and instead of, just really honoring where you were at the time, like there were so many gifts in where you were. And we went through some really deep, intense soul work because your soul is a very, very powerful, magical being. And we unlocked a lot of parts of you that weren't quite ready to be even acknowledged yet.
I wouldn't even like it. I didn't know all that when we started. You know what I mean? When we started, that outcome wasn't even in my field, wasn't even in my, was nothing. I knew something in my bones, in my
Mhm.
like deeper parts of my soul, but I couldn't name that and I couldn't say it that way, you know? And yeah, I mean, the journey together and the like, the surrender and the letting the rhythm happen the way it wanted to happen and not my way was ultimately a reflection of the new way I learned to live my life.
Mm-hmm. Look at you now, girl.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I'm so happy that we got to have this chat, and we could probably chat forever
Mm,
because we both love to talk about this stuff. So I'm sure this won't be the last time we do.
cool.
Um, but before we finish today, is maybe let folks know how they can work with you.
Yeah, if you feel called, you can go to my website, dixiebennett.ca.
We will link it.
That's where that's where most of my stuff is linked there. Definitely going through some of my own evolutions and some changes. Yeah, there's just some different programs there. If you just wanna, there's a couple tasters. I'm a big fan of the birthday energy alignment. So if you have, that's always my favorite if you're looking for something to try and something different, because your birthday is your sacred New Year's Day.
Mm.
And there's a lot of energy around your birthday. So I've discovered it's like a portal of energy 2 days before your birthday, and then it heightens, and then the door closes, and it shows me your soul's compass, and we can do some massive clearing and just get a deeper understanding of who you are, and where you're at in your own personal cycle. Like we're all in our own personal cycles, and once we understand a little bit more of ourselves on a deeper level, then we're not fighting ourselves so much. So
Mm.
it's a really nice introduction there. And of course, I'm happy to have an introductory conversation with anyone who does feel called to.
Perfect. Yeah. And hopefully from listening to this, folks get a good feel for your energy because
Thank you.
I think they will. Um, okay. And then just, I don't know, I feel like I would just want to leave space for is there any last message or anything you feel on your heart to share with those who are listening?
I think, self love and self compassion are real things. And it's, I'm still a student of that. The work never ends, and it's just a different level of graduation, a different level of understanding, and really have some patience with yourself. I I still have impatience in a lot of ways, and it's just like, why am I still here? You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
And also know that it's a season. There's a time and a season for everything. And sometimes it's a quieter, restful season, and sometimes it's an actioning season. And that's the gift of sometimes, we need the energy reserves to build, and we need that rest time to recuperate and restore. And we're not meant to be going 100 miles an hour every day in and day out for years on end, because you will burn out. And I will tell you, burnout is not a fun thing. But I do find most people come to see me because they're at a crossroads of something. And it's not a bad thing either, but there is help out there, but also, really listen in to, try to do a couple, not less is more.
Yeah.
I
Yes.
think that's the biggest advice I can give is
Mm.
less is more.
Less is more, and like less. And when there is less, you can be so much more like present and intentional about it. When there's more, it's like if you're reading 5 self-help books on the go, you're like, am I integrating any of that? No, I'm not.
Well, yeah, so one at a time, and you'll start to notice, there's repetitive patterns. It's like, oh, I'm already doing that, right? And once you've mastered one, then you can start to add another layer in.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the life mastery journey of life is, I mean, I'm a master teacher. I'm a master healer. This is a life of mastery for me on many levels.
Mm-hmm.
But the master is still a student at the end of the day.
Right. We're all on this, living this human life, being
Mhm.
students of Earth.
Exactly. And that's why I call it Students of Earth. This is Earth School, man.
Right. Earth School. Yeah. Oh, well, thank you so much, Dixie. Thank you for making time for Spirit Club and me today. And I love and appreciate you.
I love and appreciate you too. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.